Let's try. Great for everybody to be here. We're so excited to have you. We have over 200 people on this webinar, and it's no surprise because we've got a great bunch of people to tell you all about driving the future, the movement toward electric mobility. My name is Jamie Green. I am with Plug-in KC. We are a nonprofit here in Kansas City that is working on scaling up electric vehicles and electric vehicle infrastructure. I'm going to let everybody do self-introduction. So, Tom, why don't you tell yourself about yourself and Rivian?
Cool. I'm Tom Solomon, Senior Director of Strategy and Business Development at Rivian. I've been with the company from the very early days, so since 2015. I'm focused on strategic partnerships and building our B2B business, which includes the partnership with Amazon, which we'll talk more about in a bit, and launching our van product in 2025. Rivian as a company, founded by our CEO and founder, RJ Scaringe, back in 2009. We're publicly traded. We launched our vehicles in 2021. We have our electric van. We have our R1T pickup truck, our R1S SUV, and they're all built in 2 hours south of Chicago in Normal, Illinois. So really happy to have the opportunity to speak to you all here today.
Maureen.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Maureen Gillespie, the Vice President of Sales and Key Accounts at Inspiration Mobility. We help fleets and work with partners like Rivian and Evergy on all things fleet electrification, everything from figuring out the vehicle to the charging infrastructure to all of the services that you're going to need for this new technology. Really excited to speak today and work with all of you.
Great. Dan?
Hey, everybody. Dan Wilson, VP of Energy Solutions. Sorry, I'm the charging guy here at Inspiration and focused on the infrastructure side of things. I've been with the company since very early on for almost 4 years now, and been in the broader clean tech industry for about 15 years, and really excited to be here.
Great. And Julie?
Hi, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. I'm Julie with Evergy. I manage our Fleet Electrification program. I want to welcome all of our employees or our customers that are joining in today, as well as program partners like Rivian and Inspiration Mobility and Plug-in KC, and others that are on the call. Welcome, welcome.
Great. And we're going to delve in just 1 second, but just a quick housekeeping. We have allotted 15 minutes for your questions. That will be at the end. You can see that you can put your questions down below. And at the last 15 minutes, I will read your questions and assign it to whoever the individual I think is most suited. And if I don't know who that is, we're just going to throw it to the crowd. So with all that being said, we're just going to get started. So Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Perfect. Just want to spend a few minutes with the group talking to you about the Rivian and Amazon partnership and what we're doing to scale electrification together. We can go to the next slide. So just a few key numbers about the partnership between Amazon and Rivian. Honestly, it was quite aspirational when we first started talking about it, and a little bit audacious as well. We first met Amazon in 2018, and then by 2019, we were into negotiations around what this customized electric delivery van partnership could look like. Signed a contract in September of 2019, launched the program in January of 2022, which is record time from ideation to production for a scaled manufacturing program in the automotive space. Amazon has committed to buy 100,000 electric delivery vans from Rivian by 2030. They've purchased over 20,000, or they've deployed over 20,000 EDVs, and you'll hear me use the term EDV and RCV throughout the presentation. EDV is electric delivery van. That's the terminology we use for the Amazon flavor of the van. And then Rivian commercial van, RCV, is what we use to describe our product when we market it to non-Amazon customers. The vans are pretty much identical with the exception of a few pieces of Amazon proprietary technology. But in terms of the vans on the road today, they delivered over 1 billion packages in 2024. Our van platform has driven over 350 million miles. Rivian has over 77 service centers open as of today. That number is going to continue to grow, and we'll talk about service later. And then the vans have been deployed in over 32 states. If you're in one of those states where the vans have been deployed, or one of those metros where the vans have been deployed, they don't deploy them one at a time. They usually electrify an entire depot and deploy them in mass. So if you see one electric delivery van, you're likely to see many in your community. We can go to the next slide. I plan to hit on a few tentacles of the partnership. I want to talk about the product itself. We'll talk about data and telematics and our platform for that called Fleet OS. And then we'll talk about service as well. So just kicking off with the product, what makes this product unique? What was Amazon excited about? Well, we created an electric delivery van. So it's not the same as a traditional cargo van. I'll just quickly hit on a few of the key things that differentiate it. It's a walk-in van. So the van is tall enough for 95th percentile male to walk from front to back of the van. There's a bulkhead door on the interior of the van that automatically opens when the vehicle is put into park. So the driver does not need to get out of the van, walk around to a sliding door, walk into that to grab a package. The driver simply stands up off the chair, walks directly into the back cargo area of the van. Sorry, I'm in the middle of a panel. Okay. So the driver walks directly into the back of the van, picks up a package, walks back to the front of the van, and walks out the curbside door. So it's quite a more efficient experience. We designed with Amazon every detail of the van, from how many steps it takes for the driver to get from the driver's seat into the back of the cargo area, and then out on the curbside. There's a pocket door for ease of egress. We also, focused on the steps, the distance of the steps from the ground, where the grab handles are to make it as easy as possible for the driver to get up. These things may not seem so important if the driver is getting in and out of the van 10 times per day, but in a delivery van with a use case like Amazon, it's 175 times per day or so. So there's a lot of ingress and egress, and that adds up the wear and tear on the body. So we thought about all of those things. Lastly, another benefit to the partnership is we actually do their upfit at end of line in our manufacturing plant. So you see this tiny picture in the bottom right of the shelving and the flooring that we install into the van. We can go to the next slide. Just what are the benefits of a delivery van in the last mile delivery use case? And this is why Amazon is so invested into the product, why they put time, energy, and money behind the development of the product with us. If you think about Amazon's business and what I just said, if you're delivering 175 packages or 200 packages or 250 packages per day, if you can trim a few seconds off of each delivery, and then you extrapolate that over hundreds of deliveries per day, 350 days per year, tens of thousands of vehicles in the fleet, you see real material savings in the efficiency of your operation. So based on time studies we have run internally, you can save upwards of 50% time getting into the back of the vehicle, getting the package, getting out the delivery or the curbside pocket door. We can hop to the next slide. So it's not just the product itself where we collaborated with Amazon. We also collaborated from a fleet management tool perspective. So we've developed what we call our business orchestration platform, but we call it Fleet OS. And this is really a one-stop shop for Amazon to manage their electric delivery van platform. We plan to offer similar products to non-Amazon customers in the future as well. But from this fleet management platform, they can manage their service scheduling, they can manage ordering, they can see status of all of the vehicles in their fleet. So just that basic data and telematics, what's the air pressure of the tire, what's the charge status, what's the location of the vehicle. The other thing that makes Rivian vehicles unique, and you see it in our ability to create a tool like this, is that we have not just an electric vehicle, but a smart connected electric vehicle, I like to call it. It's a software-defined vehicle. We own the software stack top to bottom, which enables us to make the vehicle better over time, enables us to get hundreds of thousands of different data signals off of that vehicle, which enables us to provide better process data back to the customer so that they can manage their fleet. One example of the power of being a software-defined vehicle, when I first bought my R1T, which is the Rivian pickup truck, it had 275 miles of range. After an over-the-air update, so similar to your iPhone, our vehicles have periodic software updates. The battery engineers, through improving those algorithms, both when the vehicle's on and powered up, and also how the vehicle uses power when the vehicle's in a sleep state, the range jumped from 275 miles to 310 miles. So, a 10% improvement in my range that was pushed out to me via a software update. So that kind of shows the power of software-defined vehicles. And it's not always performance-based. It could be bug fixes. It could be new user interface. It could be pushing out new apps into the infotainment system. But all of those are things that are unlocked by our vehicle being software-defined, and all of those are things that Amazon leverages in the partnership to better manage their fleet. We can hop to the next page. So in kind of to put a sharp point on Fleet OS, it simplifies the ownership experience for Amazon. It helps them make better informed decisions about their fleet, and it allows them to unify their fleet operation. We can hop to the next slide. I just wanted to talk to our approach to service as a company, and this also applies to Amazon, especially the middle step. So we really have a three-pronged approach to service at Rivian. You heard me mention the service centers earlier, but that's really the final step in the defense in our approach to service. The first are those over-the-air updates that I talked to a minute ago. We're able to diagnose and also perform service on a number of items over the air. So because of the data signals, because it's a software-defined vehicle, we're frequently able to diagnose service issues. And there's many times where we can, through a change or through a software push or through a software reset, correct those errors or bugs or service issues that the customer is having. Another personal example, when I first bought my R1T, my frunk or my front trunk was opening incorrectly. I said, this must be a hardware issue. I created a service ticket. The engineers at Rivian looked into it and they said, oh, this is actually a software issue. And via an over-the-air update, they corrected the alignment of how my frunk opened and closed. I still don't know exactly how they did that via software, but they did, and it's worked great since. More importantly, as we get into our van business, is we can use mobile service to come to our customers and provide service at their location. Because electric vehicles are more simple in terms of parts and complexity than in internal combustion vehicles, it's about 85% of repairs needed from a service and maintenance perspective can be performed in the field. When we really need to bring that vehicle in is if there's a high voltage issue or another issue that requires the van to be lifted. Last prong to service is our physical brick and mortar service centers. As I mentioned, we have 77 today. That number will be well into the triple digits by the end of 2025. And then we also work with third-party partners, especially as it comes to fleet, for collision, for preventative maintenance, for glass repairs. So we're kind of taking the more traditional fleet approach of working with our fleet customers to enable flexibility in their service experience. We can hop to the next slide. So in closing, just a few takeaways, and happy to answer questions later as well. the scale of the partnership between Rivian and Amazon from an electrification standpoint is unmatched. The partnership hits every tentacle of the operation, including product design, digital tools, service, and charging. I didn't spend a lot of time talking about charging in this presentation because Amazon really handles their own charging, and I don't want to talk about their business, but certainly probably the biggest blocker to scaling the partnership is that charging implementation. Starting early with your utility company, starting early. It's not a uniformed solution across every depot they have. Each depot is a snowflake that requires unique tailoring, unique work with the utility. Oftentimes that work with the utility can take 18 months or 2 years to bring power to the site. So if you're thinking about electrifying at that type of scale, planning for charging early is a critical component. And then, as I mentioned, we are going to be launching this van, what we call the electric delivery van, or if it's a Rivian customer, the Rivian commercial van. In April of this year, deliveries will begin, and in February of this year, we'll begin to take orders. So really excited to get this van in the hands of other customers in addition to Amazon.
Tom, thanks so much. It was a great, and once again, yes, we will have time for questions. So if Tom piqued your interest in something specifically, be sure to write it down now. And now we're going to turn it over to Maureen with Inspiration. And it's a perfect segue, Maureen. He kind of teed it up for you. So I'll let you talk all about the charging side.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. And thanks, Tom. Really cool to hear all of the work done with Amazon. Really speaks to the work and the thought that needs to happen with fleet electrification. And so for the people that are on the phone today, we're going to talk about what that might mean for you, how you start to think about fleet electrification and all the steps that need to take place. You can go to the next slide. So before we get started, we would love to hear from you. Have you considered using EVs for your organization? What might be holding you back? Would love to hear. We're gonna gather questions right now, and then I'll talk through what we see with fleet, what challenges we see, and if we haven't answered your questions in the presentation, hope to get to them at the end. But I'll take a minute here to pause so that you can put some responses in. All right, Jamie, you want to head to the next slide? Feel free to keep putting answers in.
Everybody's shy, Maureen.
What's that?
I said everybody's shy at the moment, apparently.
Okay. All right. Well, as you go, if there's any questions, please put them in. So let's get started with why are fleets moving to EVs? I really love to hear that Amazon example because my mind goes to sustainability a lot. I'm a sustainability person, and I know that Amazon has really big sustainability goals. And so I would absolutely guess they're crushing their goals with the fact that they have the Rivians, but seeing that they tied it to a business need, to needing to reduce delivery time and how that benefited the fleet, we are finding that is the reason that fleets are moving to EVs as well. And so the first piece here that I'll talk about is value. There's two parts that come with value. There's acquisition cost and there's total cost of ownership. On the acquisition cost side, you're probably thinking EVs are more expensive. That is correct from an acquisition cost perspective. We will say we've seen about 25% of costs decrease in EVs in the initial acquisition cost since 2018. So that gap between an ICE vehicle acquisition cost and an EV is continuing to shrink. The second piece is total cost of ownership. Think about all of the fuel and maintenance savings that you will have with the electric vehicle. This is where EVs really start to pencil for a fleet. And the fuel savings come starting in month one. So we really work with fleets to figure out where in your fleet application can we find total cost of ownership savings now. The next piece is reliability. Tom talked a bit about this as well. Drivetrain, for example, a combustion engine has 2,000 moving parts. In an EV, there are 20. So when you think about the reliability of a vehicle, you are not going to have as much maintenance on an electric vehicle. Safety and tech is next. I find the safety piece pretty fascinating. It's one of the things where you don't necessarily think that an EV is attached to this, perhaps, but studies are showing that there's less of a rollover risk. If you think about the low weight, and base of an electric vehicle. The National Highway Traffic Association, IIHS, have all saying that there's less rollover risk in an EV, and that, in fact, when accidents happen, there's been less serious injury claims. Do you want to head to the next slide, Jamie? So we've talked about all of the reasons why fleets electrify, and now let's talk about what it is like to get started. I could probably take this whole slide and delete it and just put change management in 2 words across the slide, because it is a huge barrier to fleet electrification. I'm working with a fleet right now that the fleet manager said, I've been in fleet and I am being asked about compliance regulations, rebates and incentives, how to figure out energy costs. I'm working with vendors and OEMs that I've never talked to before. Fuel for me used to be this universal concept. Now I have to figure out what charging needs are where and how to navigate it. And so this can be a really hard place for fleets to start. We see sometimes as many as 12 new vendors in the conversation from somebody that previously was procuring and purchasing vehicles. So as we think about what is it like to get started, there's a lot of change management to get started, and there's also a lot of change management for the driver. So this is a new experience for them as well. They may have never set foot in an EV. They may have never charged an EV. So really sitting and understanding how you're going to frame, how you're going to make your plan like Amazon and Rivian did, and how you're going to iterate and keep producing is really important for fleets. Next slide, Jamie. Thank you. How do we get started when we're talking to fleets? We like to take a really data-driven approach with something called an EV opportunity assessment. And so in the same example that I used of this fleet manager saying, I don't know how to get started, I don't know how to find grants and incentives or work with charging vendors, we say, okay, let's collect your fleet data. We want to take a really data-driven approach at everything about your fleet. What type of vehicle do you have? Where does it go? Where does it sleep at night? Meaning, where will we need to charge it? Where is it? What are the utilities like in that area? And really getting this full scope of your fleet. And also looking at what technology exists today, what technology may exist in the next release date in 2025, and how do you start to plan out what your fleet electrification plan looks like. And so in the example that I was talking about before, we worked with the fleet to say, you have a lot of matches, you're about to replace a bunch of vans, the TCO savings is there, and just really continue to narrow in and say, here's a good scope and a good place to start. And I find that that really helps break down the complexity of where do I begin. The other piece here, and that Dan will get to shortly, is how do I figure out the charging? You have to have a plan. Public charging is not plan A for a fleet. It just doesn't work. They need a dedicated place that their vehicle is going to charge, and we have to get that done well and done right. I'm going to go to the next slide, Jamie. And so if you want to electrify your fleet, you don't know where to begin, maybe you've even started a pilot, really the message that we want to say is don't do it alone. You need support, and EFMCs like Inspiration are here to support you. In the example that I use, this fleet manager is working with us to figure out how to start a pilot, how to work on charging infrastructure. We help lease and finance the vehicles, get the federal tax credits, work on the grants and rebates and incentives. We've also had a fleet manager come to us that said, I'm stuck in pilot phase. How do I leave pilot phase? I have EVs on the road, but I don't know how to get out of pilot phase. And so that's also part of the support that an EFMC can provide, is to say, let's set the data strategy together. Let's pool everything and look at why. Did your drivers make it home like they said they would? Or is anybody having issues? And get all of that feedback so that you can continue to iterate. I think with that, I'm passing it over to Dan, who's going to talk specifically about our charging infrastructure.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. And I also want to say thank you to Tom. I think you teed up a lot of the charging topics I'm going to talk about really well. So appreciate the help there. So, and as a Rivian driver myself, I can attest to the awesome product that you guys are delivering. So talking about moving over to the charging topic specifically. So as Maureen and Tom were both talking about already, charging can be, for any fleet of a meaningful size, be a complex topic, right? And there is usually no one size fits all solution across every vehicle in the fleet and every location. There's usually a mix of solutions that are needed. And so we really, again, take this data-driven approach, as Maureen said, to figure out what is the right charging solution for each vehicle, each use case, each location within a given fleet. And so we're working with the largest taxi fleet in the Kansas City area, Z-Trip. WHC is their corporate name, so you see that name here as well. But Z-Trip is the name of the taxi fleet. They're the largest taxi fleet in Kansas City, and also the largest taxi fleet operator now in the whole United States. They operate in over 30 cities all over. So really, really excited to partner with them. And so for them, we've helped them with thinking about home charging, thinking about kind of level 2 overnight depot charging, helping think about temporary and public charging as kind of backstop options, when needed. But really the main solution for them that we landed on was this concept of a multi-fleet fast charging hub, which we have branded as PowerUp Point is the name that we use for when Inspiration does a project like this. And really the one we built in Kansas City was the first one that was built in the whole country outside of California and New York. So we're really, really excited to talk more about it on the next slide. So as Tom teed up, in terms of the timeline and complexity around charging infrastructure can be pretty daunting, I think, for a lot of fleet operators that really just don't understand anything about energy or infrastructure projects or working with utilities. So as he said already, the earlier you get started with the planning, the better. You really got to start as early as you possibly can. You'll never regret starting early on this process. So for this Kansas City project specifically, you can see the timeline laid out here. We started this all the way 2 years ago, January 2023. We had our first kind of due diligence work beginning, had our first meeting with the Evergy team, Julie, and some of her colleagues that have been with us kind of the whole way, which has been great. So we had to go through site walks, getting cost estimates, getting a contract signed for the charging with Z-Trip, the fleet operator. We had to order the switchgear, the electrical equipment 6 months ahead of construction because of the long lead times there. With the construction part only took about 3 months. So that was not the long pole in the tent at all. It was all the other things that really took a lot of time. And eventually got the site online. The Z-Trip fleet started using it in September of last year. And then we had a really awesome ribbon cutting event in October with the mayor of Kansas City and a bunch of other folks from the community there, which was great. And you can see these projects are, it's not an insignificant construction project. In the photo up there on the top right, you can see we had to dig up a lot of dirt and put in a lot of underground infrastructure to get these chargers in place. And you can see the finished product there in the bottom right. So it's not insignificant in terms of the work required. And also in terms of the coordination with partners, we had, basically 20 different partners, vendors, government agencies, the utility, that had to be involved in this project. So it's a lot of coordination of different stakeholders and a lot of complexity to manage. And we're very happy that we came in a little bit under budget despite all those complexities. So next slide. So this is more about kind of the value prop. Why do fleets find this to be an interesting solution, or why is this helpful? So in the Kansas City PowerUp Point specifically, it's located on the site of Z-Trip's taxi fleet depot, basically. So it's obviously very convenient for them, but it's also a great location because it's just on the edge of downtown, right near basically the biggest freeway interchange in the Kansas City area. It's basically giving the Z-Trip fleet guaranteed access to charging, but also a good location for other fleets as well. We started out today, we've got 12 charging stalls. We easily can expand that up to 18 in the future as demand grows, as we scale. And it really just takes away a lot of the risks around fleet adoption of EVs that Tom and Maureen have already alluded to. So next slide, we'll jump into even more of that. So what are the barriers and risks that we're really addressing with this PowerUp Point multi-fleet charging hub type of solution? Obviously, we're taking away the risk around capital investment in terms of getting the infrastructure installed. We are giving them this dedicated, reliable charging solution at a cost that's lower than generally other fast charging options because we are sharing that infrastructure between multiple fleets. And so the cost gets shared as well, which brings down the cost for everybody, which is great. Really something that I know Maureen loves in her role is the fact that this makes it easier to do, for fleets to kind of try things out and get started quickly and easily, right? They can get a demo vehicle or do a small pilot and they have a place to charge ready to go, right? They don't have to wait 6, 12 or more months, right, to get charging infrastructure in place. And then as they grow and scale up their EV operations, they can have this membership basically at the PowerUp Point to scale up and get discounted charging dedicated time slots, other things that they might want to help them electrify. And then, of course, it takes away the issue around long wait times to get infrastructure built because it's already done, right? It's when the fleet shows up, they can just show up and charge. And also because it's high power, fast charging, the drivers, don't have to sit there for a long time. They can get back on the road in 20, 30, 40 minutes oftentimes. So really excited about this as something that, again, just really lowers the barrier of entry, right? And just makes it much, much easier for fleets to adopt EVs. So in terms of the kind of portfolio that we're building here at Inspiration, we've got the PowerPoint site in Kansas City that came online last year. Right at the end of the year, we also brought online our second PowerPoint project in Pittsburgh, which is where Marine's located, and she was very excited to take her picture there last month. And so both of those basically are following the same concept of multi-fleet charging hubs, serving the Z-Trip taxi fleet, but also other fleets in the area. And want to mention that we've got capacity available. Z-Trip is not using the full capacity of either of these sites yet. So we're very excited to talk to other fleets that are interested in either of these locations and trying them out, bringing your vehicle to charge or trying to pilot. And then beyond that, we've also got a whole portfolio and a pipeline of more of these PowerPoint projects that we're developing in other parts of the country, other cities that we're working on this year and beyond. So we're scaling up this whole operation, again, to make it easy for fleets all over the country to adopt EVs. So next slide, please. And then last point, just to kind of sum things up about what Inspiration does, who we are. Our superpower is really around solving all of the complexity and barriers around fleet electrification under one roof, which we think we're really the only company that has been built to do this at scale for fleets of all shapes and sizes all over the country. So starting with, as Marine talked about, the transition planning, the EVOA process, getting the vehicle procurement and financing figured out, the on-road fleet management services, figuring out the charging, as I've been talking about, figuring out all the incentives and how to capture those, including the federal tax credit, which is not simple for fleets to capture, as we've discovered. But lots of other incentives, like we're actually taking advantage of Evergy's rebate program in Kansas City for our project there, which is great. And lots of other solutions for fleets, even beyond just switching out their vehicles with EVs. So yeah, we really are the kind of the one-stop shop to kind of solve all the barriers, and really excited to do it in Kansas City specifically. So next slide. All right, so just to wrap things up for Inspiration, if you're interested in talking with our team, learning more about what we do, or figuring out how to start your electrification journey, feel free to scan the QR code here and fill out a quick form, let us know who you are. Or also, obviously, feel free to reach out directly to Marine or myself if you want to talk to us about what we do. We'd love to talk with you. And also wanted to acknowledge that we've got a great partnership as a company with Rivian. So Tom's been a great partner for us and his team, and as Evergy has as well. As I talked about, we've been talking with them about this project and working with them since the beginning 2 years ago. And I can't say this about every utility we work with, but the Evergy team has been fantastic to work with, top to bottom. Everybody's been quick and responsive and really doing everything they can to make this project a success. So we're really excited to have that partner locally in the Kansas City community so we can deliver the benefits of electrification in the region. So with that, I'll just say thank you so much for your time and attention, and I look forward to the Q&A at the end, and I'll turn it over to Julie.
Great. This has been such a great presentation so far. And Dan, just the slide that you showed, our journey together and how long we've been working together, it's just really good to kind of revisit that. And it just shows the need for all of us to kind of support each other as people are trying to move forward with this, because as Maureen has said, it's a huge change. And to have partners like yourself and Tom, his experience with working with Amazon, just that information sharing is valuable to help folks get started. My name is Julie Dietrich. I do manage the Fleet Electrification program here at Evergy. I've been doing this since 2020. So I'm going on 5 years, but a lot has happened in the last 5 years. And I think I started in the middle of the pandemic. So it's been quite a journey for me here. I've really enjoyed kind of working in this in this space. I've had opportunities to work with companies like Amazon who, have that expertise and resources, working with Inspiration Mobility that brings those resources to their customers, and then also working with like small school districts that don't have all the resources and need that support. And we have been evolving our program to kind of help further, our customers' efforts in this space. My team does comprise of myself. I am focused on fleet specifically, and then I also have a counterpart who's focused on public charging, basically kind of services the passenger vehicle area, home charging, workplace charging, multifamily charging, and her name is Wendy. Next slide. So understanding, we have customers coming to us that either have an Evergy key account manager that they work with on all things Evergy, or smaller customers, like I mentioned, like small school districts that do not have dedicated key account managers, and the resources and knowledge that they have when they are coming to us. We did invest in an online fleet advisory tool. It helps businesses understand the cost and benefits of electrification. It doesn't replace very complex analysis like what you would see like at the Inspiration Mobility team too. But what it does is kind of helps get customers thinking about all the questions that they need to be thinking about to get started. And it connects the customer with me so that I understand all of the customers that are just considering this as an option for their business. The best way to understand the capability of the tools is to experience it. You can get to it at www.evergy.com/fleets. Next slide. This is just a kind of high-level overview of what, why are we offering this tool? Why are customers finding this tool valuable? It attracts decision makers, so it gets me to the right person at a company that's thinking about it, and it may not necessarily be someone that we currently interact with on their energy bill. We've got new decision makers, fleet managers that have never had to interact with a utility before. So if we offer something of value to them, it connects us with those new points of contact. It guides users navigating critical questions that they need to start thinking about to get started. It talks about charging solutions. It's not comprehensive, but really what it does is it matches up. How are you using this vehicle on a daily basis? And what is the minimum charging level that would be needed in order to accomplish that? Really want to start early on with that level of understanding that you don't have to replicate the current fueling experience that you're doing with gas vehicles and get that done. It is a complete change. The way that we go about sizing for charging infrastructure is how long is that car parked regularly and where is it parked? And that helps us back into appropriately sizing charging infrastructure. Education resources, rates. We have designed rates specifically for EV charging that are time-based, so overnight. So, a lot of questions like, well, what about adding all of this load? Well, adding all of this load is not necessarily a bad thing if you're adding load at the times that the grid has that capacity. And oftentimes cars are parked overnight, and that's when we have the available capacity to meet those needs. So having those conversations early on in planning has been beneficial as well. And then, of course, rebates. We do have a rebate program. It does require pre-approval. It does require you to buy approved equipment. So getting that conversation started early on in the decision-making process is also critical. You don't want someone kind of forging a path of planning and then calling us, at the end of that planning and realize, oh, I didn't consider these 10 things. So really engaging with us early on is key. And then the customer benefits, they get a really high level ROI calculation. Like, does this pencil out? Is the mathing what is realistic for fuel savings? What am I thinking about for maintenance estimates, carbon reduction, if that's important, charger configuration, as well as available federal, state, and local and utility incentives. This can change monthly, it can change quarterly, it can change yearly. So this tool will pull in kind of what could be available to you right now as you're thinking about it. Next slide. And then this is just at a glance, kind of our Missouri and Kansas residential and commercial rebate program. The commercial rebate program does offer $2,500 per port, which in other words means per parking spot at level 2. So some chargers do have 2 dispensers and service 2 parking places. That particular charger would qualify for $5,000 under our rebate program, as well as the fast charging equipment, which is much more expensive. It's kind of what you saw at the public depot, or the depot that Inspiration Mobility shared at the Z-Trip site. And we do offer $20,000 rebate per station for level 3. The maximum for a fleet application is 10 level 2 ports and 2 level 3 ports per job site or per charging site or location. $65,000 would be that total eligibility per location. We also, again, I mentioned earlier, offer the commercial rate. It's a time-based rate plan. It's 3 tiers. On peak is Monday through Friday from 2 to 8 p.m. Super off peak, which is you're going to get pennies per kilowatt hour, is midnight to 6 a.m. 7 days a week. And then off peak is every other time outside of those 2 time frames. I think I'm done with my slides. I do want to mention, and I do think we have a lot of Evergy folks on the line listening in as well. We have design team members that will support you with your construction projects. So I will be alongside with you. If you have a key account manager at Evergy, they will be alongside with you, and as well as our design team that will be helping with the utility infrastructure, and aligning your timeline with their timeline is critical. So again, can't stress enough, reach out to Evergy, even if you're very early on in your decision-making process, and we can work together to make sure that we're aligned with you or connect you with resources that will be helpful for you along the way.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Thanks to everybody. Once again, we would love to hear from you. We have time for questions. And while we're waiting for the first question to roll in, I know people are probably going to talk about what's happening on the federal level. That's not something we're really going to talk about today, but on February 24th here in Kansas City, Plug-in KC is going to have an event called the State of the EVs at the Merriam Community Center. And if for no other reason, Travis Kelce's 1969 Chevelle, which has been retrofitted to be all EVs, will be in the parking lot. You can get your picture taken with it. Hopefully you're excited because they won a 3rd Super Bowl. If not, maybe it's a consolation prize. Either way, it's a super cool car, and they're raffling it off. You can win it, $100 to raffle. And it all goes to Operation Breakthrough. If you're not from Kansas City, it's an amazing nonprofit that does such great work with children in the inner city. So we'll have more details on that this week. But hey, first question comes from Bill, who I know well. Bill, hello. He wants to know any application for level 1 charging for some fleet customers. Julie, that sounds like you.
We don't have a rebate program for level 1, but as part of our conversations with customers, and maybe even Dan and Maureen can chime in, charge management is key. And sometimes that charge management is wrapped into building load management. So, and Tom mentioned this also earlier as well, is software, can be your friend. So depending on how many fleets, I'm not sure what happened to my lights. Here we go. I don't know how many fleet vehicles you have that you'll be charging level 1, but there's going to be a solution for every problem, and definitely, bring in the experts to kind of help talk through what your specific needs are. Dan, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. I love talking about charging, probably too much. And I know Bill. We used to work together actually. So hey, Bill. So yeah, on level 1 charging, this is a great question because most people always think about like, what's the fastest I can charge my EV? Like, I want to charge as fast as possible because they're used to the gas world, right, or the gasoline world. So level 1 charging is great for vehicles that are take home that don't drive a lot of miles. And you can literally charge it off your regular 120 volt outlet in your garage, right? You don't have to install a charger at all, right? You literally can just plug it into your wall, the outlet you already have. And if you're only driving, call it 30 miles a day, that's probably sufficient actually for that type of use case. And I can say from my own personal experience, I did level 1 charging. I've been an EV driver for coming up on 11 years now. And for the first 9 of those years, I did not even have a level 2 charger in my home. I just had literally did level 1 charging with a 120 volt outlet for my EVs at home. So totally viable for that specific type of use case. If you drive more miles, you can't charge at home, then probably there's going to be other solutions that are a better fit.
All right, moving on. Darren has a question for Evergy. For Evergy, is there a preferred time of day for charging or any restrictions on when charging is done? You kind of touched on that, Julie, but you want to expand on that?
Yes. So as many may or may not know, Evergy does service both Kansas and Missouri. Missouri, we do have time of use rates for all residential customers. So understanding, and there's 4 different options that are available for you. We do have a rate tailored for EV charging for the residential customer. But if we also have a whole home EV rate for just the standard customer. So really understanding the nitty-gritty of your rate will help you kind of understand what your charge plan is going to be. Because yes, there will be a preferred time of day. If you're on a very high differential EV time of use rate in Missouri, you're going to want to tailor that charging to happen at the cheapest time, which is those overnight hours. And, our Evergy team is very happy to help you kind of back into what that charge plan is. There is also time of use rates in Kansas. They're not mandatory, but you can elect to be on those. And if you do have an EV, that could be where it pencils out that it's better for you to be on a time of use rate and take advantage of overnight charging. And overall, that rate will pencil out over a standard rate.
Great. Liz wants to know, another question. Hertz and a few other claim the maintenance on EVs was higher than their gas vehicles. Is this use error? Or is it less maintenance of EVs offset by higher prices for maintenance that is done? I guess, Tom, maybe since you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a level of planning that needs to go into electrification at scale that may not have been done in partnership in the Hertz and Tesla relationship. I don't know if folks in the call followed it closely, but at the beginning, that Hertz CEO announced they had procured or placed a purchase order to procure 100,000 Teslas, and Elon went on Twitter and basically said that there was no deal. So I think there's an element of planning and really understanding the complexity of electrifying Hertz's operation at that scale that was missed in that relationship. I know we've partnered with another rental company in the Kansas City area or in the St. Louis area at a much smaller scale, but we've done a lot of planning even to deploy 50 or 60 vehicles into their fleet. And I think they just got too big too fast, and then were overwhelmed. They hadn't created bespoke service programs to handle 100,000 vehicles. Versus even with Amazon, we have a very customized service solution that we've worked on over the last 2 years in collaboration with one another. So I think there's some learnings from that relationship. I don't want to speak too much in detail about it because I'm not a part of it. But I know if done right, there can be tremendous benefits to the customer.
Oh, back to Bill. Will the EDVs have J3400 charging connectors?
So
That's a pretty Bill question.
the RCV van in the Amazon van today has the CCS connector still. We're constantly studying whether or not to change that connector, but at this point in time, it still has the CCS connector.
All right, Joni wants to know, can you share actual fuel costs versus electric cost comparison for operating EDV? What is the impact on the current power grid to sustain an increase in EV fleet? What is the availability of EV mechanics for servicing vehicles?
On the first point, I can't share specific data today because our business is Amazon's business, and I'm not in a position to go into detail on their costs and operating costs. In terms of what is the impact on the power grid, if EVs convert to be 75% what we call the car park or total amount of cars in the road, or a materially higher number than the 3 or 4% of the car park that they are today, we will need to continue to invest in electric infrastructure, and that includes investing in the power grid. I don't want to speak too broadly as to how much more power the grid would need. That's not an area where I'm a deep expert either, but certainly this needs to be a collaboration with utilities. You're going to need government support at all levels as well. I'm a strong believer that battery technology is going to continue to get better, and at some point, batteries, the economic case will just be so obvious that an electric vehicle has a cheaper upfront cost, but also total cost of ownership versus internal combustion, that the consumer will pull demand through, and that will cause us to continue to evolve the power grid and think about how we service that need. In terms of availability of mechanics, at Rivian, at least with our consumer customers and in the Amazon relationship, our mechanics are performing all non-collision service. As we start to launch and work with non-Amazon partners in the fleet space, we are onboarding more third parties to actually go as far as performing their own service, the company that owns the fleet performing their own service in some use cases, and we have training programs for that. Oftentimes they point us to a third-party partner that they'd like us to work with, and with a few of our partners on the R1 side, including Mevco, who I believe is on this call, we've trained them in our service processes, and they're providing service to their fleet customers today.
Can I, Julie, real quick? I want to kind of, because I don't think I know nerds like us understand, but can you tell little people about peak demand and what Evergy has to be prepared for every single day, and whatever the usage is currently right now, you have a lot above that. To kind of explain that to folks real quick, and then I'll jump on the second word.
Yeah, really, my area of expertise is just understanding, because I work in programs, is helping with load shape. So we have programs that help reduce peak with energy efficiency or demand support, DSM programs, demand response. And then my program specifically is there to be involved in those discussions so that when fleet load is being added, that customers are taking advantage of a time of use rate and being heavily incentivized to charge off peak. Talk about charge management plans, right sizing charging equipment so that we're not oversizing chargers at job sites to to charge cars as super fast as possible if it's not needed. A school bus does not need to be charged in 30 minutes. It's parked 20 hours a day. So really, through our programs and rate design is how we mitigate that risk to adding additional load at peak.
Thank you. All right, Daniel wants to know, how much value and interest have you seen in utilizing charging optimization partners when vehicles do not need to charge ASAP? That seems like inspiration question.
Sorry, coming off mute here. Yeah, like charging optimization partners. I assume they're talking about charging management software, I think is what this is asking about. So yeah, absolutely. We at both of our PowerUp point projects that we built so far, we're using, kind of industry leading fleet specific charging management software that would be similar to what I'm sure Rivian's doing with Amazon, right? To kind of optimize charging at those kind of fleet depots. So absolutely, and this is, it's less helpful when in a taxi fleet use case, right, where they generally want to come and charge as quickly as possible, similar to a public charging scenario. But for things like the Amazon fleet, where they are parked overnight, they can take 10 hours to charge overnight in most cases. Absolutely, the charging management software is, I would say, crucial to making sure that the cost of that energy is as low as possible, reducing the demand and spreading out, the load profile.
Well, we've got a few more minutes. Here we go. Liz wants to know, has Evergy had interest from other utilities, municipal or co-ops or other public utilities in replicating a program like this? Or even others within Evergy's territory? How important has it been to prove this model works for customers?
So, we have a 5-year program in both Kansas and Missouri, and we're kind of early on in both of those programs. So what I have learned, and kind of what you saw with Dan's timeline, is these types of projects can take many months to go from start to finish. So we are just now starting to see our projects come, that I've started the conversation a couple of years ago, to come to completion. So, anecdotally, I feel like this is definitely working. Our program is valuable, but what we will continue to do as the program continues to evolve is collect the data, and then at the end of the program, we will evaluate the effectiveness. Like, did the program objectives get met? Sorry that we cannot answer that question now. If there is other, municipalities that want to have discussions with me, I love, to talk about solutions or help information share with our peers across our region. So definitely reach out to me. I'm happy to kind of share anything I can as far as what we've learned so far.
Great. Ray wants to know, for the fleet charging, what's the panel's recommendation on choosing EV charging management system software? What are the best software providers in the U.S. market?
I can jump in and just say we've done a lot of research and kind of evaluation of different software vendors in the space on our side. And I don't want to say publicly like who's the number one in that list, right? Because there's actually different providers have different strengths, right? And different things that they're good at or that they're kind of designed for. So I would love to follow, I guess, Ray, with you offline maybe and talk about that kind of in more detail and understand like what is the use case, right, that you're trying to solve for. And then we can talk about like who are the best, kind of software providers based on the need.
Brian wants to know, how do the Inspiration charging locations, such as the one here in Kansas City, and obviously we saw the one in Pittsburgh, manage time of use utility rate structures with fleet charging contracts? Yeah,
great question. And Brian, I think we've met before, so hello. So yeah, we are on the time of use, the EV, it's called the BEVCS time of use rate with Evergy for the Kansas City PowerPoint site. And right now, we basically have baked in that utility tariff structure into our kind of pricing model to the fleet customers that are using the site, right? So right now, we're basically charging them a flat rate that doesn't vary by time of day for the Z-Trip fleet, because we wanted to kind of keep things simple initially, but it did include, we were kind of banking on the fact that some of that charging would happen during on-peak times, and we kind of, priced it accordingly. But in the future, I think we're very likely to have some kind of time variations in our pricing to fleet customers to account for the fact that on-peak pricing on this time of use rate is much higher, obviously, than off-peak.
Yeah, as somebody who has had an EV, my wife has had an EV since 2017. 2016. I've had a plug-in hybrid since 2017. Definitely do time of use. It saves you a ton of money. Not only is it great, Evergy loves it because it's not during peak. We love it because we're not paying much. We had a foot of snow here. The fact that I don't ever go to gas stations, I can't tell you how lovely that is. And charging at the lowest rate at the same time while you're asleep, it's just a win-win. It just doesn't make sense not to do it. So I don't know if we have anything else. If not, we will wrap up. I really want to thank everybody. It was such a great presentation from all of you. Thank you so much for your time. These are great conversations to have. Obviously, if you missed this at the time, you can watch it on demand. We will put it up on our YouTube page here shortly. And I think all the information also how to contact these folks directly, have questions. And so until next time, thank you guys so much and have a great rest of your January. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.